Hey, what's up guys? Joker here. Today we are going to be talking about the first Geekbench score which has been posted online for Ryzen 5 2600, which is expected to launch in April as part of the 12nm Zen Plus architecture from AMD. So as I said, we've got a leaked Geekbench score, which a lot of people are excited about because it has about a 10 to 15% boost over the previous generation Ryzen 1600, depending on how you read into that. So we're going to kind of analyze the information that we have and go from there, and of course always discuss it down in the comments below. So we're going to start off over on WCCF Tech. This is where I first saw the story go up about this, where they say up to 15% faster in single core tests, which would be absolutely amazing if AMD could pull that off, although that is a little bit higher than what we had expected to see on this architecture. And before we go look at that Geekbench score, let's just scroll down to the Ryzen 2600 specs so we can kind of just get a quick little update on what we're looking at here. So obviously, as I said before, this is on 12nm Zen Plus, going from 14nm on the previous generations. We're still getting 6 cores and 12 threads. Really, the big change here is that they are having a higher base clock and boost clock, which is probably why we are seeing as much gains as we are in the performance here. So looking at the base, on the previous generation was 3.2, now it's 3.4, and on the boost clock it went from 3.6 up to 3.8. So we have a 200 megahertz boost on the base clock as well as the boost clock, which is definitely going to affect these scores if they were tested at base clock. So here we are now on Geekbench, where we can see the single core score for the Ryzen 2600 got 4269, and on multi-core score it got 20,102. Comparing that with Ryzen 5 1600, we would expect to see a single core score of around 3896 and a multi-core score of around 17,433. So definitely a nice bump up from that. Like I said, about 10 to 15% performance improvement over the previous generation, but we also have to anticipate that they are using the boost clock here, and the way that the boost works on Ryzen Plus, I should say, versus the original Ryzen, it actually boosts on all cores versus just having it on 2 cores like they did with the first lineup of Ryzen 5 CPUs. So it's definitely would be getting a better boost across all cores if in fact they were using boost, which I am inclined to believe that they are using boost at this point in testing, because they are moving into retail sampling probably over the next month or so. And this right here is a qualification sample, not an engineering sample. So very likely we're not going to see too much performance uplift between these numbers and when Ryzen 2600 actually launches in April. Now, how do we know that this is a qualification sample and not an engineering sample? Well, if we come down to the code name here, we can see AMD Ryzen ZD2600. So 2600 here, denoting that this is the 2600 CPU. We can see over on the right here, the base clock and boost clock of 34 as the base, 38 as the boost. And the real thing we want to focus on here is the ZD. So the D here would denote desktop part, and the Z is actually what tells us it's a qualification sample. So if we bring up this little convenient graph here that I was able to find searching around earlier this morning, we could see ZD right here. So the Z would be a qualification sample, whereas if it was an engineering sample, if it was engineering sample 0, it would be a 1. If it was engineering sample 1, it would be a 2 there. But we have a Z, so that tells us this is a qualification sample. And then if it was actual retail version, it would be a letter Y here. And as I said, the D means that it is a desktop part. So that's how we know this is an actual qualification sample, which is really the last step before they start actually putting out the retail versions of these CPUs. So really what we can take away from this is that it's got the higher boost and everything, but the IPC gains are probably not as big as some people are wanting to believe. It's not probably going to be 10 to 15% on IPC. I think we will see a gain there of probably around 3 to 5%, because when you overclock Ryzen 1600, if you were to overclock it to 3.8 gigahertz on all cores, you're getting pretty close to these numbers right here. So it's not that big of a gain actually. In terms of IPC, we're likely going to see improvements in things like latency and also just really the clock speeds in general, which is still a good thing though. If on 12nm plus we can overclock these a little bit more and get them up to around 4.2 to 4.3 gigahertz regularly, that's going to be awesome. Those are going to be really good things for gamers that are wanting to get more performance out of the Ryzen architecture, maybe a little bit higher end GPU, so they're not getting bottlenecked at the frequency point and being able to actually push out more frames like a higher end GPU would want to do, and typically you would have to go with a faster Intel CPU to do that. But for the mid-range, you know, Ryzen 1600 was perfectly fine, but getting another 200 to 300 megahertz or even 500 megahertz with overclocking, I think would be absolutely amazing. So that's really great to see, although we'll just have to wait and see when these actually launch in April for how big the IPC gains will be. But I just wanted to put this out there to kind of, you know, go through this, analyze it, and so you guys can know what to look for as to whether or not this is actually going to be a boosted sample or a non-boosted sample, because that's really the big question right now is, was this on boost? As I said, I'm inclined to believe that it is because it's a qualification sample, although I'd love to be proven wrong, because if I am wrong, then we would be seeing a very significant boost in performance over the previous generation if boost is not enabled. But at this stage of the game, I think that it likely is. If you disagree or agree, let me know down in the comments below, especially if you are looking forward to Ryzen 5 2600 coming out in April. But I'm going to go ahead and get on out of here, guys. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll catch you in the next video. Sorry. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're not already, and all that good stuff. And sorry for the hat. It's not my best hair day. I didn't have time to lay on the lay right this morning, so I was just like, just throw on a hat there. Got my fresh hat to stay fresh. Yeah, teddy fresh. So, yeah. Peace, I guess.